Welcome to Gateway Lectures. Here are the solutions for the quiz day 7 and today's subject is strength of materials. Here comes the first question. A shaft is subjected to a maximum torque of 10 kN and a maximum bending moment of 7.5 kN at a particular section. If allowable equivalent stress is in simple tension is given as 160 MN/m². Okay, the diameter of the shaft according to the maximum shear stress theory will be in mm. This is the condition of the shaft. On the shaft there was a maximum torque and the torque value is acting, and the torque value is given as 10 kN, and also maximum bending moment acting on the shaft is 7.5 kN. Okay, and it is said it is acting at a particular cross section. So this is what I've considered is a particular cross section of the shaft. Okay, see here, if you remove the torque, suppose there is no torque, the complete shaft will be in pure bending because there is only a sagging bending moment of 7.5 kN acting. If you remove complete bending, then it will be a pure torsion of T is equal to 10 kN acting, right? So we need to calculate the diameter of the shaft such that the allowable stress in simple tension should not exceed 160 MN/m². Okay, how will we derive this? And also they have said to calculate diameter of shaft based on the maximum shear stress theory. Okay, we should use a theory of failure, maximum shear stress theory, and calculate the maximum diameter of the shaft. So to first do that, we will see how the stresses will be acting on the shaft at a particular cross section. Suppose this is our cross section. Okay, here I have considered this element here. Here I have considered this element. So I will be representing it here. Okay, this is our element. General element is shown by a cube. Right, now what are the stresses acting on this shaft? First thing, due to bending moment, bending stress will be acting. Then what is the direction of bending stress here? Instead we will do one thing. Here we will consider the lower element rather than the upper element. We will consider the lower element because here in lower element we will be getting tension. Even compression also we can take, but during calculation we need the tension value, because here sigma b at the top or bottom both will be in magnitude wise they are same. Both will be the same. Sigma b max. Just for analysis purpose we will consider the lower element, and here is our lower element. And how the stresses will be acting on the lower element? First of all, in lower element, due to sagging bending moment, the lower element will be under tension. Nothing but the lower fibers will be under tension. If lower fibers are in the tension, then how to represent them on this cuboid? So these are the tension stresses. Value is sigma b max. So sigma b max is acting on the cube as tensile stresses. And what about the shear stresses? Here there is also bending shear, but bending shear is generally negligible when compared to torsional shear. So if you consider torsional shear here on that element, how will be the torsional shear being acting? Since it is under twisting motion, right? Since it is under twisting motion, the torsional shear I will be showing here on this element. It will be in this direction on the bottom and in this direction on the top, and upward direction on the right side of the cross section and downward on the left side of the cross section. We are watching the cross section from this side. Okay, these were the tau max values. Tau max values. Let's suppose this plane is xy plane. Then what were the stresses? Sigma x is nothing but sigma b max, and there is no sigma y here, so sigma y is 0, and tau max nothing but tau xy. is also the value which is equal to tau max, and how that value will be given is 16t by pi d cube. And how will be the sigma b max given? 32m by pi d cube. These we can get from one from a torsional equation and one from bending moment equation, right? Bendment equation. Now how will we get the principal stresses here? Generally the principal stresses were given by sigma 1 comma 2 is equal to sigma x plus sigma y by 2 plus or minus under root of sigma x minus sigma y by 2 whole square plus tau xy square. Okay, here we know the values of sigma x and also tau xy. Sigma y is also known, it is 0. By calculating this, we will get the values of sigma 1 and sigma 2 as we will get the values of sigma 1. Maximum principal stress value is sigma 1 is equal to 16 by pi d cube into m plus under root of m square plus t square. Similarly, we will get the value of sigma 2 as 16 by pi d cube into m minus under root of m square plus t square. Here, since it is a case of biaxial state of stress, sigma 3 is 0. In the given question, the given condition, it is a state of biaxial state of stress. Okay, because the stresses all acting only in two planes, right? So sigma 3 is 0. And from this, how can we calculate the diameter? So sigma 1 is known, sigma 2 is known, sigma 3 is known, and they are said to use maximum shear stress theory. Maximum shear stress theory. What is maximum shear stress theory? As per maximum shear stress theory, the maximum permissible shear stress on a cross section or at a particular point should not be greater than, or it should be greater than or equal to. Okay, this should be greater than or equal to the maximum absolute shear stress acting on the cross section, that can be given by maximum of, that is nothing but the radius of the Mohr circle, sigma 1 minus sigma 2 by 2 comma sigma 2 minus sigma 3 by 2 comma sigma 1 minus sigma 3 by 2. So we need to know which among these is the maximum value, and that value should be less than or equal to the tau max permissible on the material. Okay, here if you can observe, sigma 3 is 0, and among these all, sigma 1 minus sigma 2 will be the maximum value. Tau max is greater than or equal to, removing the greater than or equal to symbol, then tau max is equal to sigma 1 upon sigma 2 by 2 on the cross section, right? Now tau max is nothing but the permissible shear stress or the yield strength, okay, or yield strength in shear. This is the yield strength in shear, that is equal to half of the yield strength in tension, nothing but the yield tensile stress, yield strength in tension, right? By substituting them, sigma yt by 2 is equal to sigma 1 minus sigma 2 by 2. From that we will get sigma yt is equal to sigma 1 minus sigma 2. This is our final condition to solve the question. Here sigma 1 and sigma 2 are known. In the question, m was given, t was given. M was given, t was given. We need to calculate diameter, and also sigma yt was given. By substituting, sigma yt is equal to sigma 1 minus sigma 2. Subtracting these both, we will get it as 16. Okay, 16 by pi d cube into under root of m square plus t square twice of under root of m square plus t square. From that, sigma yt was given in the question as 160 mega Newton per meter square, mega Newton per meter square. So you multiplied by mega, you convert that into 10 power 6 into mega Newton per meter square, you convert into Newton per meter square. 16 by pi d cube. 16 into 2, getting the 2 outside, under root of m. The value of m given in the question is 7.5. So 7.5 square plus, and the value of t given in the question is 10 square, right? And here it is in kilonewtons, so doing it square, and again outside we'll be getting 10 power 3, right? By simplifying this, we'll get the value of d as 0.0926 meter, that is nothing but 92.6 mm. And this is our answer. Going to the next question. If E is assumed to be correct, an error of 1.5% in the determination of G will involve an error of about a dash in the calculation of Poisson ratio when its correct value is 0.3. Here in the question it is given E is assumed to be correct. So when we are doing some calculations regarding calculation of Poisson's ratio, when E and G were known, and the E value is taken as correct, but while taking the G value there is an error of 1.5%. Since it is a positive error, so 1.5% more the value of G was taken, right? And then Poisson's ratio is calculated. Then what can be the possible error in Poisson's ratio when the actual value of Poisson's ratio is 0.3? Let us see the question. Let us first write the given data in the question. E is assumed to be correct. Then dE upon E is nothing but 0. Since there is no change in E, it is assumed as correct. And also in the determination of G, there is an error of 1.5%. Therefore, dG upon G into 100 is nothing but 1.5. And the exact value of mu is given as 0.3. Okay, so we need a relation among E, G and mu. So what is the relation? E is equal to 2G into 1 plus mu. So every time wherever you see the question of errors, you follow this simple method. Just differentiate on both sides, assuming each and every value as a variable. Don't assume any value as constant, each and every value as a variable. Then you will get differentiating dE. E is nothing but dE is equal to, here G is one term and mu is one term. So it is like differentiation of U into V. So first of all it will be 2 into 1 plus mu into dG plus 2 into G into d mu. You did differentiation of UV, right? dE is 0 since there is no error, and dG was known. We'll just simplify all the values here. We'll get d mu as minus of 1 plus mu into dG upon G. Okay, you substitute dE as 0, then you will get the value of d mu as. We need to calculate the value percentage error in calculation of mu. Therefore, we need to take d mu upon mu. That is nothing but minus of 1 plus mu upon mu into dG by G. And also we need to calculate the percentage, so multiply it by 100. Okay, from this the value of this is given in the question as 1.5. So mu value is given as 1.3. So 1.3 mu is given as 0.3. So 1 plus 0.3 upon 0.3 into 1.5, and the value comes out to be minus 6.5%. That is nothing but while calculation the error was we have taken 6.5% less the value of mu is taken, right? In this way any type of question can be solved. Just differentiate on both sides, assuming that each and every value is a variable. So this is our third question. A vertical beam PQ is used to construct a dam of height h, that is equal to 3√3 meter as shown in the figure. The beam is simply supported at the both ends. The hinge was not shown at Q, but it was said that beam is simply supported at the both ends. That is, it is having hinge support at the both ends. The point from the water surface, this is a free water surface where the maximum bending stress occurs is. This is a case of multi-concept. This involves a concept of fluid mechanics and also the concept of strength of materials here. So how we will be proceeding into this question? And we know from the free surface when we are moving down, the pressure increases. So therefore the hydrostatic force that is applying on the plate or the beam also increases as we move down. Since the hydrostatic force is increasing as we move down, the variation of force is given by a triangle. Okay, and here on this beam, this load, the variation of hydrostatic force, act as an uniformly varying load, nothing but UVL. Okay, the load is acting like a uniformly varying load. Uniformly varying load, the value at P is 0 and let the value of Q be some W naught. That is a maximum load acting on that point. Okay, so this is a case of uniformly varying load. So for uniformly varying load, we should know the variation, how the load is varying with length. For that, see at 0, nothing but let's suppose this is at x. This is at, let this be x. X is equal to 0 and the height is given as h. So let this be some x is equal to h. We'll use a generalized coordinate. Don't mind whether it is y or x, but let it be x is equal to 0 and let x is equal to h. You can even take y is equal to, but generally we are used to take horizontal beams. There we'll be taking x, right? So here for simplicity purpose I am taking again x here. So at x is equal to 0, the load is 0, and at x is equal to h, the load is W naught. Then at x is equal, then at x, at some place, let be a cross section xx, which is at a distance of small x from the P. So at x is x, we need to get the value of load. So nothing but W into x. By taking these both, we can get the value of Wx. Nothing but Wx is equal to W naught into x upon h. So now at any point x, we can calculate the value of load acting. So this variation is W naught into x upon h. Okay. Now anyhow we have taken the section xx. Now what we'll do is, since it is a simply supported beam, we'll take the reactions on it. In the next page we'll be doing the solution. And we know in case of UVL, the complete varying load can be imagined to be acting at a point, and that point will be at the centroid of the triangle. So the centroid of the triangle will be at a distance of x by 3 from the base. So this is, see, this is our triangle and this is our base. So the centroid will be acting at x by 3 from the base and 2x by 3 from the vertex. So this is x by 3. Actually here x is nothing but h. So it is h by 3 exactly, to be h by 3 from the base. So here it is also h by 3. Right. So this is our total load that is acting. And what is the value of magnitude of total load? That is nothing but the area of the triangle. So it is half into the value of base is W naught into the value of height is h. Okay. And at point P, and this is point Q, at a point B there is a reaction force along horizontal, that is RP, and at point Q there is a reaction along horizontal, that is RQ. There is no vertical forces here, so we do not consider any vertical reactions and not even moment. Now we will take moment about Q to be 0 for this beam to be in equilibrium. Okay, these are coplanar non-concurrent, so we can apply all the three equilibrium conditions. So sigma fx is equal to 0, sigma phi is equal to 0, sigma m about some point on the body or out of the body should be equal to 0. So here I have considered a point Q on the body and I am applying moment about Q is 0. So first of all, what is the value here? Rp, the force, into the height is h. The height is h. So Rp into h is nothing but equal to Rp into h causes clockwise moment, and this total load that is acting at the centroid causes anti-clockwise. So we are equating clockwise and anti-clockwise. And that is equal to half into W naught into h into, and the distance it is acting at h by 3. Okay, from this we will get the value of reaction force at Rp is equal to W naught h by 6. we need, we can even calculate RQ also, but for our question there is no need actually. If it is needed we can calculate. And now we will take a section XX at a distance of x from P. So this is our section. I've taken one section XX and it is at a distance of x from the P end. So if this is XX, then at each value then the variation of load will be in this way, right? Here we will get a small triangle. Okay, now we need to calculate the total load here, which is acting again at the x by 3 from the base, and that value is nothing but W naught x by h, right? Now the total load, value of total load is W naught x by h into half into x, because this base here is W naught x by h, since we can know it is Wx, and the area of the triangle is half into base into height. So this is half and this is base and this is our height of the triangle. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll calculate the bending moment acting at the XX section. So BM at XX is nothing but, on the top we have RP, and at a distance of x it causes a bending moment of x, RP into x, minus half into x into W naught x by h. This is the total load acting, and it is acting at a distance of x by 3 from the base, nothing but from the XX cross section. Okay, and this bending moment value will be getting as W naught, RP is nothing but W naught h by 6. Substitute RP, we will get W naught h by 6 into x, minus, simplifying this we will get W naught x cube upon 6h. And in the question we were asked to calculate the maximum bending stress. So we need to calculate the maximum bending moment. We know where the bending moment will be maximum. At that point the bending stress also will be maximum. So here to calculate that, what we will do is, here the varying thing is x, and also in the question it was asked to calculate the height from the free surface, the point of from the water surface, nothing but from the free surface where it will be maximum. So we'll be, that is why we have taken from P, the x is taken from P. So dm by dx, and the variable is x, should be equal to 0. When we equate to 0, we will get the condition of x for which the Bm of xx will be maximum. So that nothing but the Bm is maximum. If Bm is maximum, that is bending moment is maximum, then bending stress will be maximum. So now by doing this we will get W naught h by 6 minus W naught x square by 2h is equal to 0. From that we will get the value of x as h upon root 3, and nothing but h is given as 3 root 3. So 3 root 3 upon root 3 is 3 meters. So the value of x is obtained, and therefore at x is equal to, or that height of 3 meters from the free surface, at height of 3 meter from the free surface, bending stress is maximum. Bending stress is maximum, and this is our answer, 3 meters. Next question. A rigid wheel of 1.2 meter in diameter. This is an interesting question. We can imagine a practical case here. A rigid wheel of 1.2 meter in diameter to be provided with a thin steel tire. Okay. The maximum diameter of the tire, if the stress in the tire is not exceed 120 meganewton per meter square, is. So what should be the maximum diameter of the tire to be used here? See, generally this can be seen practically also. Generally in villages we used to have bullock carts, carts which were pulled by bulls, right? They used to carry load from one place to other. Okay, for those tires they will be using wood, right? They will be using wooden wheels, but wooden wheels there will be a lot of wear and tear when they are subjected to road or uneven conditions on the road. So when we come under some stone or very sharp objects, soon they will be deteriorating the material, nothing but soon the material will be destroyed, wood material. So to safeguard that, what they used to do is they used to take a metal ring which is having a diameter less than the wheel, and they used to heat the metal wheel. We know that once metal wheel is heated, metal ring is heated, it expands, so its diameter increases. So when they heat it, its diameter increases, then they will place that on the wheel. So once it starts cooling, then the metal ring again contracts and tightly fits the wheel, nothing but it creates a shrink fit or interference fit onto the wheel, such that there will be a protection to the wooden wheel outside the surface. So even under very harsh conditions, the bullock cart will be running. Okay, so there is no deteriorating in material, right? So this is a practical case we can see here. So one thing we need to know is practically what should be the tire diameter. Should it be greater than the wheel or should it be less than wheel? If it is greater than wheel, then no need of heating it. We can just simply place over it and soon it will get out of the wheel. It should not happen. So the tire diameter, let it be some dt, that should be less than the diameter of the wheel, dw, right? That is the case. Only then we'll have a shrink fit. Okay, shrink fit is nothing but it completely shrinks, the tire shrinks, the metal tire shrinks onto the wheel. Okay, so then what here we can see that once the tire is heated before fitting, okay, and the tire was heated and it is placed on the wheel and we let it cool. So once it cools, it gets contracted and tightly fits into the wheel, fits over the wheel. So when it tightly fits over the wheel, at each and every point on the tire, there will be a reaction being developed by the wheel due to the shrink fit. So at each and every point on the wheel, we'll be having the reaction forces, each and every point. And these reaction forces act throughout the circumference. And we know in pressure vessels, when there is such the gas pressure, there will be two types of pressures, stresses developed in the pressure vessel material. One will be a cylindrical stress, circumferential stress, nothing but hoop stress, and other will be longitudinal stress. Here this is a thin and less width, it will having less width, so the longitudinal stress will be comparatively less, but this will be having a strong circumferential stress. So how the circumferential stress will act? Suppose here we take a cross section, then our thin tire cross section will be in this way, right? This is our cross section, it will be in this way. And how the stresses will be acting here? Since this is a hoop stress which is positive, so at each and every point there will be a tensile stress being acting, that we can name it as hoop if we want. Okay, so if we take a cross section here, so the stress will be acting in this way, that is perpendicular to the cross section, and it is an axial load. Okay, that is nothing but axial tensile stress. And this, and now we will calculate what were the strains involved here. So first thing, before fitting, nothing but before fitting and before heating. So we will take as before fitting mean nothing but before heating. What is the circumference of the tire? Nothing but pi into the diameter of the tire. Then after fitting, once the tire is heated and it gets fitted onto the wheel, then the circumference will be pi into diameter of wheel now, not the diameter of the tire, because it is correctly fitting over that and there is a reaction force developing. So after fitting it, the diameter will be dw. Before fitting, it is having its own diameter as dt, right? So what is the strain involved during this fitting operation? Is nothing but, strain is nothing but final dimension minus initial dimension upon the initial dimension. So final dimension here is nothing but circumference. So we'll take the circumferential strain because we are considering the circumferential stress. Okay, for circumferential strain it is pi into the final is, it is dw minus initially pi dt upon initially dt. This is nothing but equal to dw minus dt upon dt, right? This is the strain acting, and we know circumferential stress and circumferential strains both are the normal strains, normal stress and strain acting on the body. So for normal stress and strain within the elastic limit, by Hooke's law, E is nothing but sigma upon epsilon, nothing but stress upon strain. Okay, from here we can calculate the value of stress as strain into Young's modulus. So here also stress acting in the member is nothing but strain. Strain is dw minus dt upon dt into the value of E was given in the question, 200 gigapascals, nothing but 200 into 10 power 9 pascals, and the maximum permissible value of sigma was given in the question, 120 megapascals, so 120 into 10 power 6, and dw was given in the question as 1.2 meters. So all the values were known. Then we will calculate the final value of dt, and that comes out to be 1.199 meter. So it is less than 1.2 meters. And finally, this is our answer. So these were the easy question and also some little conceptual question which we can imagine practically. Next we have question 5. A rubber rod of 50 mm diameter is placed in a 51 diameter hole with rigid walls. Determine the change in length of the rod after that 8 kilonewton load. See here the load is a compressive load along the length. So 8 kilonewtons load is applied. Given E is equal to, Young's modulus is equal to 40 megapascals, and the Poisson ratio for the rubber is 0.45. So for the rubber, the following data were given. Young's modulus is 40 megapascals and the value of mu is 0.45, right? So we will solve this question here. So under the application of that load, we need to calculate what will be the change in length of the rubber. We know definitely it will be a compressive change, nothing but the rubber length will be decreasing. So what will be the change in length of the rubber, right? Since the load is compressive, the length decreases, and also we know the diameter increases. So length of this rubber rod decreases due to compressive load and the diameter increases. So we first of all we will define the plane here, plane or the directions. So this is our rubber material, nothing but rubber rod, and let these be the directions. This is x direction, and this is y direction, and this is z direction, right? So first we will assume a case here, that is, first we will assume a case here, case 1, and the case 1 is whatever the diametral change along x and z. See, these were the z and x were along the diameter of the cylindrical rod, y is along the length. So the change in diameter along the x and z, both will be the same since it is a cylinder, along x and z. The case 1 is, we will assume it to be less than the 1 mm gap it is having between the rubber and the rigid walls. Okay, this we will be taking this case because suppose if the delta D is less than 1 mm, then the rubber material will not touch the rigid wall. If it doesn't touch the rigid wall, there will be no reactions developed. There will be no reaction force acting on the rubber material due to the rigid wall. If there is no reaction, there is no stress along x and z directions. Then simply we can apply by Hooke's law, E is equal to sigma upon E, sigma upon epsilon, stress upon strain. Stress value is known, nothing but P upon A, that is 8 kilonewtons upon the area. And also strain is nothing but delta L upon L. From there we can directly calculate the delta L. But if it is a case like delta D is greater than 1 mm gap, then sure there will be stresses developed. And then we need to consider the triaxial case. Okay. So when delta D is less than 1 mm, then no reactions, thus no stresses along x and z. So first we will calculate what actually will be the delta D. So let's check whether our case 1 satisfies. For that, sigma y is nothing but along the length, that is a compressive load being acting, F upon area, and the compressive load is given as 8 kilonewtons, nothing but 8000 newtons, upon the area is pi by 4 into the diameter of the rubber is 50 mm square. Okay, 50 upon 1000. Right, from that we'll get the value of sigma y as 4.0743 megapascals. So once sigma y is known, if sigma y is known and we assume that delta d is less than 1 mm gap, first we will check strains, nothing but the delta d gap. So strain along Ex is nothing but strain along Ez, that is nothing but delta d upon d. Okay, and that value comes out to be minus mu, we know that, minus mu into sigma y upon E, but here sigma y is compressive, so minus sigma y upon E. Right, that is nothing but 0.45 into the sigma y value is 4.0743 and the E of rubber is given as 40 megapascals. Okay, from that we are getting delta D as 2.291 mm, and that is greater than the 1 mm gap. Therefore our case 1 fails. Thus reactions will be developed along X and Z directions, and stress along X and Z exists. Right. So now we will calculate what exactly will be the stresses in that sigma X and sigma Z direction. Nothing but they both will be equal. Now we will be calculating the stress. So for calculating stress, we will take the strain condition here along X. So the strain along X, generally it is given by sigma X upon E, the longitudinal stress along E, minus the lateral stress along Y and Z. So minus mu into sigma Y upon E minus mu into sigma Z upon E. Right. Since sigma X, sigma Y, sigma Z, all the three are compressive here in the nature. Therefore, the sigma X can be written as minus sigma X upon E plus mu into sigma Y upon E plus mu into sigma Z upon E. And we know sigma X is equal to sigma Z. Right. And Ex is nothing but the delta D value we have obtained. The exact delta D value we have already obtained. That is nothing but equal to the gap 1 mm. So the rigid wall constrains the rubber expansion to 1 mm. So delta D is 1 mm. So the E along X is nothing but delta D upon D, that is 1 upon 50. And that is equal to sigma X value is known. Nothing but minus 4.0. Sorry, sigma X we need to calculate. So it is minus sigma X upon E plus mu is 0.45 for rubber into the sigma Y value is known, 4.0743 megapascals plus 0.45 into sigma Z is nothing but again sigma X, and here upon E, and here is also upon E. So in all the terms were known as sigma X, from here sigma X we will be getting the value as 1.87 megapascals, and that is nothing but equal to sigma Z. Right, sigma X and sigma Z were known. Now we will calculate the strain along, for this triaxial state, now we will calculate the strain along Y, nothing but delta L upon L. Sigma X was already known, and from that we know that strain will be generally longitudinal minus lateral. So sigma Y upon E into mu by E into, since here sigma X and sigma Z were equal, we can directly write it as sigma 2 into sigma X. Okay, and these are all compressive in nature, so we can write this as minus sigma Y upon E plus mu by E into 2 sigma X. Okay, from that delta L is equal to L into minus sigma, nothing but minus of 4.0743 upon the value of E is 40 plus mu is 0.45 upon 40 into 2 into 1.87, and L is also already known, given initially as 300 mm. From that we will calculate the value of delta L, and it comes out to be minus 17.8 93475 mm. Why minus? Because it is compressive, the length is decreasing. So here our answer for delta L is 17.935 mm. This is our answer. And thanks for watching. These were some basic conceptual questions on strength of material. We'll be doing many on shear force and bending moment also. There will be very such interesting questions. Stay tuned, stay updated.